music, dance, theater. It's time to take a seat on the aisle with Tom Alvarez. Hear from performers, producers, presenters, and creators who enrich our lives in the performing arts. Who's on stage? Here is Tom Alvarez to introduce you.
Hello. Welcome to On the Aisle with me, Tom Alvarez. Austin Huntington was appointed Principal Cellist of the Indianapolis Symphony Orchestra in 2015 at the age of 20, making him one of the youngest principal musicians in a major American orchestra. Join me now as I go on the aisle for a wide-ranging conversation with Austin. But before we do, let's listen to Austin perform Chopin's Sonata for Cello and Piano. Welcome, Austin Huntington.
Hey.
Fresh off your vacation.
Absolutely, yeah.
So, how was it?
It was good. It was actually very nice. I was in London.
So, why London?
Well, my girlfriend lives there. She's going to school there. So, I had a week so I would visit her and just kind of spend some time, visit a city. I've never really spent a lot of time in London. My cello that I play on, I bought it just north of London, and that was the only other time I had been there previously, is to play that cello and to pick it up. But otherwise, I haven't really had a chance to spend a lot of time being a tourist in London, so it's good to be a little bit like that.
And that cello happens to be kind of rare. Tell us about it.
Sure. So my own personal cello is we don't actually know who made it, but it's from 1740. It's from Florence is all that we know. It's a rather beautiful cello. And for me personally, I was very happy to found it. And I believe in a few things, but mainly that things work for a reason. And so, unfortunately, with the global situation at the time, there was a lot of turmoil. But the one silver lining for me personally is that I bought it in London right after Brexit happened. And so two things kind of lined up, and I was able to get a cello for a much more affordable price than what it should have really been. And so I was really lucky to find that. I've been playing on a lot of other different cellos recently, just because we're looking at buying a very, very nice cello for an investment purpose. But until that happens, I love this cello very much. And even after that, I'll still love the cello.
You know, that reminds me, I saw an act. Have you heard of Brandon and James? They are a duo. He sings, and his husband, James Clark, plays the cello. They have a cabaret act, and then they have a pianist.
Oh, nice.
And James, they mix, Broadway popular music with classical pieces.
Oh, nice. That's
which
amazing.
Seems to be becoming a trend.
Yeah, absolutely. Ways. Yeah, we, especially with our principal pops conductor, Jack Everly, we tend to do at least 3 or 4 Broadway-based shows throughout the year, and I love the music. I never grew up listening to that music. Besides, I mean, my late grandparents' favorite, they would call it an opera, was the Phantom of the Opera, for example. And so I knew that, but we did South Pacific this past year, and that was amazing because I knew of all these songs that we played previously, but then I could actually see how they fit into the actual piece. They're amazing. Yeah,
I've seen them all and reviewed them all. I was also speaking about the fusion movement that's happened. Stephen Hackman, for instance, who we just saw recently, and remind me, Beethoven and
Beyonce.
Beethoven versus Beyonce, and then of course earlier than that fabulous Beatles show.
Oh yeah.
And what was it called?
That was And I Love Her.
And the focus on all the songs that had women as principal subjects, right?
Yeah.
Penny Lane, and what were some of the others?
Oh, there was Hey Jude. Oh God, most of the time I don't know what happened the previous week or what's happening the next week. It's so it's hard to remember the. It was really great though.
I bet you it's a blur. You guys turn around stuff so quickly.
I mean, even for example, this next week this current week, we have the July 4th concerts, and then before that I wasn't there for that, so they did 2 cover bands, then July 4th. Next week I think is going to be disco, and then the week after that is going to be Cody Fry again with the ISO. And so it's just there's this trend to do 2 or 3 programs because I mean, not to pull back the curtain too far, but a lot of these shows are not terribly difficult to put together because they're tried and true. With the cover band, we basically don't have to we just have to contribute our sound. We don't have to contribute our active thinking, to put it very well put for a PR perspective.
Well, you don't exactly call it edit, though.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's one of those where, because the shows are so well put together, we don't have to think. So they actually put 2 shows back to back, and it doesn't really, fluster us too much. It's just kind of more of an enjoyable experience than playing the same show over and over and over again.
So that reference to that cellist, James Clark, what I started to say, he talked about how he has to get an extra ticket for his cello.
Yes.
And he was talking about all the stories in his career of his cello, getting from place to place, and how it can be really a logistical nightmare sometimes.
Absolutely.
Is that your experience?
I've never, luckily, had too many bad experiences with flying with the cello, but I mean, even to use the example of bringing the cello back from London, I had a cello already because when I went to try my cello, I was at a summer music festival in Verbier, Switzerland. And so I already had my cello there that I was playing. So my parents came to visit. I flew with my mom to London to try this cello. We immediately knew this is the one because I've been looking for a long time. So then I had to, that same day, buy a ticket back from London to, I think it was Geneva. And so found that ticket back, had to book that ticket. Luckily, it was not a very full flight, so booked that. But the tricky part was I couldn't fly with more than one instrument because of regulations or whatever. You're only supposed to have one extra seat because it's not a person. You can't book it, with a birthday or anything because they check the passport and it's like, this is a box of wood. So instead, what they have to do is they have to put it as cabin baggage, which means it's just like a reserved seat, just like customers of size sometimes have a reserved seat next to them. It's booked the same way. And so when we were flying back, my mom took my cello and she got kicked from Lufthansa, which back then was, the Rolls Royce of airlines. Is, we had leather seats, which was, back then seemed like a luxury. She got kicked from that to Swiss Airlines, which apparently is like the European Spirit Airlines. Still much better because it has the European standards of flight versus the American Spirit, unfortunately. So she got kicked. She kept complaining in the most loving way possible. It's like, just make sure you know what I'm doing for you. I'm flying Swiss Airlines for you. So then I flew Lufthansa with my dad and my brother, and we finally made it back, and everything was fine. But before that, before I knew that you had to buy a seat, we one time gate checked the cello at 3/4 size show when I was 10 or 12, and you're supposed to pick it up from the oversized baggage, which at that time I think I was flying into Minnesota. And so the oversized baggage is right next to where they bring it out. It wasn't like a carousel like it usually is. And so they open the door and I see the cello case on top of probably a 5 to 10 foot high pile of suitcases just on a push cart. And so I think my parents basically almost committed a federal crime and almost ran into the back area of the baggage claim. Just like, get that cello off of there. I don't want it to fall. Luckily, the attendants were very kind and, put it down. We checked it out. Everything was fine. But yeah, definitely flying with the seats is way less stressful.
You got a lot of stories.
Yeah.
Well, he also talked about how all the TSA people, oftentimes people make jokes and cracks and they think that, they're the only one who's ever said that to, like calling it a big guitar. Yeah. Don't you wish you'd have chosen a smaller instrument to play? You've heard those a couple times.
Well, there was one recently where the cello that I am currently playing on is this beautiful, it's well into the seven figures. It's by a Roman cello maker named David Tekler, not my own cello, but one I'm borrowing. And I was bringing it back from the instrument shop that I was borrowing it from, and they had those new TSA scanners, so it couldn't fit the cello case in there, so I had to have it hand checked, and I was freaking out because this is over $1 million. I was like, can I please come with you to check it? And it was like, no, you have to stay behind that. And so they picked the cello case up first before opening it, and they shook it. And I was like, please don't do that. Please don't do that. And so they were just like, sir, we're going to have to ask you to calm down. It's going to be okay. And I was like, okay, put the cello case down, please. This is an old instrument. It's from 1710. And, they finally got the gist of it. They were able to open it up after some trying. They looked at it. They swabbed it because it has this white powdery stuff on it, rosin, which keeps the bow in contact with the string. They swabbed that because they thought it was an illicit substance or maybe bomb residue or something.
Cocaine.
Exactly. That's how you play all these programs. Just straight cocaine. But no, basically they finally did it. And then they basically closed the case, didn't lock it, and then handed it to me. And the cello was hanging, the case that they gave it to me was not very good. It was hanging by like 3 little Velcro strips. And they handed it to me. You could see one of those break. I was like, oh God, please don't. So they finally got it through. And I think that the entire time they were rolling their eyes, probably like, this cello's, it's just like a guitar, like it's probably $500 at most.
Well, you know what I think about all that. Bless their hearts.
I mean, they're trying their best. They're doing their job. Unfortunately, they just don't know, and they have no reason to know. I mean,
sure.
That's not in their.
Well, they should give them some cello training.
Exactly. We should invite them to some concerts and show that.
Why the cello?
Sure.
Let's start with why the cello.
So when I was 4, I have an older brother who is no longer a musician, but he's actually lives down the street here in Indy. He goes to IU's med school. And so he picked up the violin when he was 4 and I was 3. And so the story goes that he started playing the violin. I had sibling rivalry. I wanted to play an instrument too because he was playing an instrument. And I wanted to have a better instrument. So back then to a 3 or 4-year-old, bigger is better. And so we regularly went to orchestra concerts. I think this was like Grand Rapids or Battle Creek. And so I saw a double bass lying on its side, and I pointed to my parents and said, I want to play that. Because, in my mind, it's like 20 times the size of a violin, so it's 20 times better. And, after some logical discussions with the 4-year-old, they, I think, convinced me in some way that the cello was basically a small double bass and that I would be still getting what I wanted to get. And so I started playing the cello, loved it ever since. And there were a couple other instruments that I experimented with, like played the French horn for 6 months, played percussion for a year, clarinet and saxophone, and piano for like 5 or 6 years, but was pretty horrible at all of those. So ended up sticking with this one because it got along with me a little bit better. What
makes the sound of the cello so unique to a lot of ears, like mine?
Yeah. So
my favorite instrument.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think a lot of it comes down to the lowest note on the cello is typically the lowest note that most people are able to sing. And then the highest note is the highest note a soprano is able to sing. So it kind of has the range of a 4-part chorus all the way up from the lowest note to the highest note. And a lot of the sonority, if you think about, let's use violin as an example, not that the sibling rivalry is still alive, but if we use violin as an example, the higher overtones create a brighter sound. And that is much more for kind of like a soloist track. You can hear it in front of an orchestra. It still sounds, you can make it sound very sweet and beautiful, but it doesn't really have that resonance that kind of makes... I don't know, it sounds weird to say, but it's almost like your chest vibrates as well with it because it has those lower overtones. There's a little more vibration that you can actually feel with your body. And granted, you can also feel it because I'm playing the cello and it's like right there. But a lot of it comes down to, I think that it's just the most appealing collection of resonances, whereas the violin might be a little bit, if we're talking about negatives, the violin might be a little bit shrill. Viola is kind of this awkward child where it's, it has that brilliance of the violin, but it's kind of like a cello with a cold kind of thing because it doesn't quite have that openness because it's kind of an odd model. The bass is great, but it kind of, you can't really draw somebody in with the sound of a bass because when it's up high, it sounds rather strained, and when it's down low, I mean, I've sat on bass auditions before, and I think the great people have really stood out, but there have been so many where it's just like, I can't even tell what notes these are because they're so low. And so it doesn't really draw you in like the cello does, where the cello, also if you try to sing along with it, you can sing along exactly with where that resonance is at. And I think that's a lot of it.
I think that's why that instrument is becoming increasingly popular in other formats like cabaret.
Oh, yeah.
And an intimate setting, if you think about it.
Yeah.
It really, so it lends itself well. It's very to that particular kind. And I'm seeing more and more cello solos here and there. Has it always been that way, or do you think it is a trend?
I think it is a trend. I mean, if you look at, not to like go all historical on you, but basically from the Romantic period, even sometimes in the classical, once people realize that cello can be a solo instrument too, they start to feature it more and more. The big quote that we always kind of regret as cellists, we don't have a Brahms concerto like the violin does, like the piano does. And so there was one performance. Brahms was before Dvorak. Dvorak is the big kind of gold star kind of example of a cello concerto, what it can be. And Brahms heard Dvorak's concerto premiered live, and then he apparently said to Dvorak afterwards, if I knew the cello could sound like that, I would have written one way long ago. He didn't say way long ago. He probably is a lot more distinguished than that. But I mean, talking about popular music, one of my favorite new artists, Loife, is this fantastic singer, but she's also an incredibly talented cellist. And so she sings and plays cello. And again, I think it's, the timbre of her voice and the timbre of the cello match up so perfectly that sometimes you don't actually know if she's singing or if she's playing, which I think is such a beautiful thing.
Before we go any further, Austin, of course, we heard that exquisite piece under the introduction. And I know that you brought a couple of other selections for us to hear. So what's the next piece we're going to hear?
So the next piece that you're going to hear is a little excerpt from Bloch's suite from the Jewish life called Nigun. It's originally written for violin. So, kind of going back to our conversation about, the cello being a solo instrument, a lot of times cellos have to steal violin, piano, singer repertoire. So this is originally a violin piece. And you can hear what I love so much about it is it just fits really well. This kind of slightly yearning character. It's also really fun to play because you can slide all over the place because it's in the style. And so it's a really fun piece that I had a lot of fun playing and recording.
What are some of your other favorite pieces?
Sure. So that's like asking.
And by the way, that was just gorgeous.
Oh, thank you. I mean, it's like asking a parent who the favorite kid is. Like, they're going to say they don't have a favorite kid, but they're going to have a favorite kid. So for me, if it's just a solo piece, one of my favorite ones is the slow movement of the Brahms C minor piano quartet. It starts, opens up with a cello melody, obviously, which is why I love it so much. But then as you go, you add in the violin, so and the viola, and then everything, it almost is like one instrument playing. And it's such a beautiful melody that gets passed around that every time it gets past a new instrument changes slightly to be more idiomatic to that instrument. And it has this intense feeling of desire, of this yearningness, of this, it's one of those words, painfully beautiful is the word that I've heard it called before. And I've been very fortunate to play it a couple times, but it's one of those where I feel like if I had to play it every month, I would never get tired of it.
Painfully is one word. Achingly is another. Yeah. I often hear when it comes to the cello, yearning, which you already mentioned, all of those emotions.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, it gives me, it's visceral.
Sure.
I mean, it's soul touching.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And as an artist, that's what you want to achieve. You want people to feel that way, right?
Well, and that's kind of our job as artists. It's the same thing with any art form in a lot of ways, where we can get our own personal satisfaction. We wouldn't be doing this if we didn't enjoy what we did. This isn't like a normal desk job, the stereotypical desk job that people show up 9 to 5. They hate their job. They hate their bosses. This isn't like that. You can turn it into that if you really want to. And I've known plenty of musicians who have despised the conductors working with, despised their section leader, been very jaded about everything. But at the end of the day, we're playing beautiful music and we're getting paid to do that. And so you have to be very careful to kind of separate that kind of mentality. And for me, it's much more satisfying when you enjoy what you're doing because the audience can feel that as well. But at the core of it, our whole job is to give the audience a form of art that they can enjoy. We are there to serve the audience. We're not there to serve ourselves. Mm-hmm. And the same thing, maybe people paint for themselves, but those people who paint for themselves, maybe they were discovered 100 years later, but people don't know who they are. The people that are known for having these beautiful artworks, let's say Monet or one of my favorite, Kandinsky or Mondrian, they don't paint for themselves. They paint to kind of encapsulate what they're feeling to show to other people, to have their perspective. Same thing with like writing articles, recording podcasts. It's what you love and what you want to share with other people. And I think music is the exact same way in a lot of ways. And so if we can touch one person's mind, their heart, I think that's a win for us.
Austin, that's why I reached out to you to be on this podcast, because it's exactly what you did for me. And I wrote about it in the review of the John Williams pops concert that you did, the Ultimate John Williams. That solo piece that you did from 7 Years of Tibet.
Yes.
That cello solo was just remarkable.
Oh, thank you.
How did you feel about that piece? What did you want to communicate?
Sure. So I shouldn't say this, but the first time I saw that movie, I fell asleep. And so my girlfriend and I were watching it, and I suddenly realized I have no idea what was going on. I missed about half an hour in the middle there. So, we turned the TV off, went to bed, and then the next day we watched it with maybe a little bit more caffeine in our systems. And it's one of those movies where it's a very long movie. It's like 2.5, 3 hours. But it's one of those where if you pay attention to all the intricacies, really try to put yourself in the shoes of not only this foreign, how do you say, he's from, I think, Austria originally, but he's stuck in Tibet for a lot of unforeseen reasons because it breaks out World War II. We have all the conflict with Tibet and China. And so he's essentially a foreign body in Tibet and in Nepal and in those surrounding areas. And so this intense feeling of he doesn't have a home anymore. The home that he knows is being controlled by these horrible people. So even if he had a home, you wouldn't want to call it a home. He's in a place that's so much different. He has so much to learn from it because people we surround with, he gets to know the young Dalai Lama, even before he realizes that he's the Dalai Lama. And so it's this really interesting kind of idea that they're both learning from each other. This foreign, I don't want to call him a soldier, but let's call him a foreign diplomat, and the Dalai Lama are learning from each other, even though the Dalai Lama is supposed to be the all-knowing, kind of all-leading person in Tibet. And so you'd realize that they're both human. They both have these feelings of loneliness. Even the Dalai Lama was expressing loneliness because he has all these advisors around him, but he doesn't have any friends. He doesn't have any way to actually have fun. He's a kid. And so this feeling of isolation, because also when you're a monk, you don't really come into contact with a lot of different people. And the people you do come into contact with, it's all in this very spiritual, very quiet manner. And so there are these intense longings to want to be normal. And the world around them is changing so much and is in so much pain. I mean, it's very, very similar to what everybody's experiencing now, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, even all the way back to the dawn of humanity. Is the world around us is on fire, and we are trying to just make things what we think is normal again. But then you start to think, what is normal if it's always been a similar version of this. So that's kind of what I wanted to have come across, is just there's this moment in the middle where, there's this grand, because I mean, you look at Tibet, it's gorgeous. I always wanted to go to that region. I've only been to China once, and I haven't been to anywhere else in Middle East or in Asia since then, unfortunately. But it's so beautiful there, and it's so grand. So you hear the score, and it sounds like the mountains that you're surrounded by. But then it ends, and you have a singular, almost chant line with the cello all by itself, and you might have like a little gong noise to signify like the wind hitting a bell kind of thing. And that's the only other noise that you hear. You might hear some birds fluttering by, but you're alone. And you're thinking about that. You're thinking about life in it. So it's a very, not to go off the deep end there, but in this like 7-8 minute piece. But that's kind of what John Williams is so amazingly talented at, is encapsulating all of that feeling in one small movie.
I often wonder where composers get their ideas, and
sure.
He really studies the script.
He does. And it's one of those where, I mean, even, one of our ear training teachers at Colburn, we had to take a lot of classes that you kind of wonder if you'll ever use them. The idea is, the high schooler in math is like, oh, when am I ever going to need complex division kind of thing? But this one was actually really interesting because our ear training teacher was one of the orchestrators for John Williams. And so apparently what he would do, he would get this script and he would work closely with the director, which is why John Williams and Steven Spielberg work so well together, because the director and the writer would modify the script and the story so that even just little ways so that it would match with the music, and vice versa. John Williams would write the music so it matched with that. And one of the big ones, for example, with Star Wars is all these motives that keep coming back. So then, the one that I always love is, when Obi-Wan pulls out the lightsabers, like, this belongs to your father. It had a little bit at the end, the Darth Vader theme trailing off kind of thing. We have never heard the Darth Vader theme before. Same thing with, Luke and Leia, big sisters, that appears motivically in music first before we actually know what's happening. So if you pay close attention, you can hear these little Easter eggs that the melancholy. Yeah.
The melancholic quality was the part that really deeply touched me.
Sure.
He communicated that loneliness that we all have experienced in a way that, it's brilliant. It's brilliant.
Yeah. And that's the thing about music, is it's so individual. Everybody has their own taste.
Yeah, Jack Everly from the podium told a story about you and John Williams, and he conducted the Pops, I don't know, a few years back, correct? And what year was that?
That was 2018, February.
And it was so cool to see the video and, the collage of clips and stuff from his appearance here. And, by the way, I love the fact that ISO is utilizing the screen and video and stuff to tell its story and to showcase you guys. You've been one of them.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's very, very smart for them to market and also educate.
Oh, yeah. Well, especially like with today's modern audience, not a dig at the audience at all, but the trend is moving towards lower and lower amounts of the amount of time that you're able to pay attention to something. People's attention spans. That's
because of the iPhone.
Scroll.
Scroll.
Well,
I do it.
Well, the whole thing, I mean, this was a big thing back when, not to be like back when I was a kid, but there was a new form app called Vine that was absorbed. Basically, it was absorbed in some ways into a bunch of different apps, but TikTok is the newer version of that. But Vine was only 7 seconds, so you kept seeing 7-second videos. And I feel, honestly, that has lowered everybody's attention span because they expect to know, everything that happens either in 7 seconds or have such a suspenseful hook that they have to watch the rest of the 60-second long video, which 60 seconds now is considered a long video. And so then to expect somebody to sit and listen to, let's say, an hour and 20-minute Mahler symphony, we have to do something to kind of adapt. And so kind of going back to, for example, Steve Hackman, what he does so well is he keeps the audience engaged by, hey, listen out to these things. This is, you'll hear, let's say, Hey Jude come up, but then you'll also hear something inspired by Hey Jude that, was actually the original piece by Chopin or so. And so it's
another brilliant man.
Exactly.
This relates to the whole thing, attention span and all that. Maybe it's a good and bad thing, but in the case of, we've talked about him when you and I first talked about these artists who are fusing classical elements and modern music, and Hackman, of course, is one of them. I mean, Hendrik Lamar. What are some of the others? Coldplay.
Yeah,
you played all of those. But the guy we talked about, Hauser, he's on TikTok. Exactly. He's also on my reel, and he's all over the place because I guess the algorithm figures out what you like. And like I'm getting a lot of Mexican stuff about Italy because I like all those things, and they figure it out. And Hauser, on a gondola, Hauser and a ski lift chair. I don't know Hauser, but he's promoting the art form.
Exactly. That's kind of as a classical cellist. I've had so many.
Isn't that better than nothing though?
Well, that's what I end up coming to because he came and played a show in Indianapolis, and kind of as a joke, the cellist was like, "Oh, we should buy tickets and sit in the front row, the splash zone, and all that." But it ended up coming down to everybody makes fun of him because in some ways he does cheapen the art form. He plays these beautiful pieces and plays them in kind of a trashy way.
I often look at them and think, this is really cheesy.
But at the same and I agree with that. But at the same time, like you were mentioning, it does draw more eyes to cello, to classical music.
He's coming here soon, I think.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah. Are you going?
We'll see if I'm in town or if I have a planned vacation that comes up exactly at that minute.
Does he solo for symphonies? Does he get those kind of bookings?
I don't think he does.
Or do they consider him sort of...
Well, I think a lot of times you'll see videos on YouTube of him being like in Europe, and he'll do with like a festival band. It's something similar to like Andre Rieu or a lot of those kind of more fiddler types, a lot of more of the visual aspect. He does a lot of that in Europe. He's more so, I think, doing his one-man cello. He does, he has a backup band behind him, but he was actually, I mean, I'm sure he still is, but what he puts out is a little bit different. But back when he was in school, he was actually an incredibly talented cellist. He and his duo partner, Lukas Schulich, they both, won international competitions. They went to international conservatories, and there are videos of them playing when they were in conservatory, and it's just as good as any highly trained classical cellist. And so I think that's also what makes me a little bit disappointed is I know there's so much more subtlety and so much more there that he could do without losing a lot of the eyes that he has on him. But I think he's created such a strong brand now, and he has such a strong loyalty that if he did go more subtle, he might lose out on the level.
I'm wondering, and this, again, so much of what we're talking about relates to Steve Hackman. I interviewed Steve, and I've reviewed a couple of his shows, and, I love conversing with him. He's so... I don't throw virtuoso around. I believe you to be a virtuoso musician, but Hackman is in a different league than so many conductors and composers. I mean, he does everything.
Well, I think he's one of those where he's actively pushing forward the art form. I think, and again, to take your words out of your mouth, I think that I don't use that word a lot, but I think he is, like, his music is genius. It's one of those where I would have never thought to the one that keeps coming to mind, my favorite show we ever did was the Kendrick Dam Lamar, which is Kendrick Lamar mixed with Stravinsky Petrushka. And the way he described it during the first rehearsal was that the whole Kendrick Lamar Dam album, that follows basically every track is an element of humanity. You have fear, you have humble, you have lust, you have all these things that everybody encounters every day on this kind of storyline that you get from this imaginary character. And so then you pair that with Stravinsky, which is a story about a puppet. He's magically animated, and he's coming to terms with, am I human? Am I not human? Do I feel these emotions? He ends up feeling the emotions, and what you see is he's the most human character in the entire play, even amongst humans. And so what Steve does is, it actually works out very well. He pairs the album in order with Petrushka in order, takes the themes and kind of, I think that's the best word of crashing it together, basically. So you have the backup themes and rhythmic motives from Petrushka mixed with the melodies and the words from Kendrick Lamar, and I think it's so exquisitely well done. I've never heard an audience be louder than that.
You know, before I go any further, you'll get a kick out of this. Now that I have a podcast, I hear from haters.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Nice.
I've arrived.
I know, that's how you made it.
Well, someone, I don't know, somewhere, one of the, I think it's Apple, you can make comments about the podcast. And someone said, I suggested, Tom, quit interrupting your guests and quit being an insider. Who are these people you're talking about? And that's a good point.
That is, yeah.
And, I have to learn these techniques.
Sure.
That are traditional broadcasting. I'm a broadcaster, but I've never done radio. So this is kind of cool. I'm learning the radio business.
Yeah, absolutely.
But a good point so I'm going to let you tell our audience who have no idea who Steve Hackman is.
Sure.
Who is Steve Hackman?
So Steve Hackman is a conductor. He's the conductor. Trying to think his official title. I think he's the artistic director of the Uncharted series, or creative director of the Uncharted series. He does a lot of stuff in LA, and I think he has a little test orchestra in LA that he writes these mashups, these fusions, because he's a classically trained conductor. He went to Curtis Institute of Music. For those who know classical music, that's essentially the creme de la creme of conservatories. It's notoriously impossible to get in, and they only accept the best. If you think about any of the big American soloists, composers who kind of graced the stage from the 1900s to 2000, they most likely spent some time at Curtis. And so he went there for conducting. He is so entrenched in the world of tonality, harmony, but also in pops music, because he conducted, I think recently, I'm trying to think who it was it Billie Eilish or one of the other ones at either the Grammys or some sort of award ceremony. He was conducting for them. And so he's entrenched in that world as well.
Did you know he's recording film scores there?
I didn't.
Oh, yeah. He's
That's really
composing
cool.
film scores.
So, I could see them being
into
very, very successful. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's one of those where, for those who don't know, he takes his knowledge on both of those and then kind of combines them and finds some kind of unifying aspects. So it's not just too random. Like when you hear Beethoven and Beyonce, you think, oh, those are the two most random.
And I've noted a number of times it's seamless.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's a miracle.
Exactly.
When you combine hip hop with classical music.
It can be so poorly done, but it's done so well.
And it's anything but cheesy.
Exactly.
It's like mind-blowing.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward next
How do you like playing for him as a musician?
I love it.
What's his style as a conductor?
So he's very, very clear. Because I think a lot of times there are so many little transition points that we're used to playing. For example, for the bass on Beyonce, there's this mode of the dun 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 dun, and there's a very difficult passage technically for strings that is just these runs up and down with that rhythm, and he modifies it and then brings it down a couple of keys. And so he has to be so clear, because we get to that, it's like, oh shoot, what's happening? And then we look up to him for guidance. He's just there with a strong hand, just like, this is exactly how it's going to go, because he knows exactly how it's supposed to sound in his head. He knows, then if we suddenly go into half tempo, he shows that so clearly, whereas we want to still keep going in the same tempo because that's the tempo of Beethoven. And so that's a lot of times, I think, what makes it so seamless is that he's so confident as a conductor, because he knows he came up with this arrangement. He knows exactly how it's supposed to sound. So we trust him 100%. We trust that the product that he's putting out is of the highest quality and also really, really cool and really fun. And so he's also just incredibly kind and nice and genuine as a person. He's one of the few people from LA that I would say doesn't seem like they're from LA. As somebody who went to school in LA, I think I can say that still. So
yeah. Yeah, I don't find him a bit pretentious.
No,
Yeah, he's real. He is very kind.
Yeah.
Speaking of all those wonderful qualities, you have them all, and it's reflected in your music. And if there's anybody who knows what something should sound like, it's you. So let's hear another example. What's this next piece we're going to hear?
Sure. So this next piece is going to be actually from my master's recital in IU. During the pandemic, I went to did a master's at Bloomington because we weren't doing all that much here. And so this is the prelude from Bach's Third Cello Suite, which I think, speaking about idiomatic cello writing, it kind of just fits into the cello so well. It's in C major, which is the cello's happiest key. It's the most resonant key. And I always have a blast playing it. It's what I play for all auditions and anytime that they need a little 3-minute piece. So this is from my master's recital at IU.
Okay, let's take a listen. So we didn't spend that much time talking about your education. Mm-hmm. It's obvious you learned a thing or two down at IU, which is a premier music school in the country. That's undisputed now, isn't it? It's like right up there.
It's amazing, yeah. It's also one of those where I think the way that music degrees are going, it's much better to go to a place like that than to go to a straight conservatory, unless you're sure you're going to be a soloist or want to. I mean, for example, I went to a straight conservatory in Colburn in Los Angeles, where they only teach music performance. They don't have any music theory degrees. And so the way, kind of talking with the way music is going with, it isn't just one of those where you can show up, play your piece, and go home. You have to know everything that's going on in the world of music, and you have to know how to market yourself. You have to know, you can't just kind of stay in your narrow lane of music anymore. So going to an actual university that is fantastic both at music, but also in so many other areas. I mean, both of my two brothers went to IU for both their med school degrees, but also my younger brother for his biochem dual major as well. So there's so many fantastic degrees you can get there. And to be a well-rounded human being, but also a well-rounded musician, you can't just study music performance anymore. Maybe 50 years ago you could, but nowadays you have to know a little bit more than that.
You know, during the interview that we did for On the Aisle, my column, we spent time about your personal life. And I really enjoyed learning that you're a runner.
Yes.
We spent a lot of time talking about that. And then you were preparing at the time for a marathon.
Yes.
How did that go?
It went really well. It was the Chicago Marathon, I think. And so that was amazing. At least I think it was. But yeah, so it was my first marathon major I ever ran. And so there are 6 marathon majors. There's potentially a 7th one that's going to get added next year, unfortunately. I mean, fortunately, because you have more places to run. Unfortunately, because if you want to complete that 6/7-star finishers medal, it costs a lot of money. And so I'm not ready for that yet. But I did Chicago because it's a 3-hour drive away. And it was the most electric atmosphere I've ever had. It was the only marathon that I feel like I conquered the marathon, because the marathon is one of those where it's such a brutal distance, and if you go for time like I was, it's draining.
And we discovered, I used to be a runner, I shared with you. We talked about how it's a great exercise for all kinds of things. I used it for problem solving, meditation, all those things. And I asked you, what's the connection between music and running for you?
So a lot of it comes down to what you were just saying, this kind of meditative aspect of it. I remember when I was first preparing for auditions, this is going to sound like the most music nerd thing ever, but I would time my cadence, the number of steps that I take per minute, to some sort of variation of the beats per minute of one of the excerpts that I would play. And so it turned into almost mental practice for me. And so, for example, there's the one that I remember is Verdi Requiem, which is just an A-flat major arpeggio up the cello. And I would time it where every note that I would play would be one step, essentially. And so what I was realizing is that I could actually hear what notes I'd be able to miss, what I'd be able to hit, my phrasing, everything, because I had played it so many times and I was thinking about it after I played it. So then I knew when I went into practice what I had to fix, which was very good. But even in a deeper sense, a lot of times the kind of difficulties that you come up against when you're running a marathon, running a half marathon, 10K, 5K, whatever it wants to be, that kind of mental toughness and resiliency that makes a successful race or a successful run, you need that both in music and I remember playing a concerto and it wasn't going very well. It was an off day for me, but I remembered, you just have to get through it. If you miss something, then make the next phrase that you play the most beautiful phrase you played all day, kind of thing. And then that's the whole the red herring argument for music is like, if you miss something and you play something so beautiful the next time, nobody's going to notice what you just missed, kind of thing. Maybe that's a little bit of deception there. But same thing with running. If you have a really bad split, don't focus on that. Focus on making the next split exactly what you want it to be. And even so, like you have, for example, with Chicago Marathon, I had one race that lasted about 3 hours, 40 minutes. So I had that one race. And what you didn't see from that race, from that 3 hours and 40 minutes, is tens of hundreds of hours of preparation, of training, of nutrition, of talking with my coach, of figuring out fueling strategies, of everything. So it's like the picture of the tip of the iceberg. You have the tip of the iceberg being the actual race, and then you have this massive iceberg underneath, like all the training, all the preparation. The exact same thing is about music. This concert, for example, the John Williams concert, we have the actual concert, which total for 3 concerts was 24 minutes of solo. But so much beyond that was the practice, learning the score, watching the movies. Actually, like Jack was saying before, actually fighting slightly to get the score because it's not in public domain and it's not able for purchase. So these were John Williams' personal parts, which is a whole nother story. But so that's everything that people don't see. And so in a lot of ways, those are completely seamless, where whatever you do to prepare for a concert or to prepare for a marathon dictates how that concert or that marathon is going to go. People always talk about, there are going to be bad days. There are going to be bad concerts. There are going to be marathons where you just step off the course, you don't finish, whatever. But most of the time, if you have a consistently bad concert or a consistently bad marathon, ultimately, and I treat myself the same way, it's ultimately on you, because you need to fix something with your preparation. You need to figure out your performance anxiety, your nerves, or anything else. And that's kind of how I approach both.
It also helps with maintaining your stamina.
Yes,
absolutely. You need that as a musician.
Yeah, especially
when you're having to sit there in a certain way in order to perform, and that demands a lot of stamina, right?
It does, yeah. It's
and especially you've got Yuletide coming up.
Oh my God, yeah. that's also
so
the mental
I asked you
topic.
this question too, which is one of my favorite. Your answer was just great, and that's okay. So tell me the truth. What do you think about playing? How many performances of Yuletide?
Usually 28 to 31.
And you gave a good reply.
Yeah.
Well, maybe Kevin Lynn was on the show.
Sure.
Right. And his reply was, my background is such that it was always stressed to me that anything you play, whatever it is, if it's 4 or 5 concerts in a row, 21 like Yuletide, the long run, that you treat each performance as if it's the first time the audience is hearing it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Give them 100% show.
Yes. And that's something that also Jack Everly mentioned, because he mentioned it to me at my first Yuletide as well, because I think that he saw, a kid.
That's right. You were the one who told the story.
Oh, sure. I mean, it was one of those where I had just finished college. I was pumped about my job. I was really excited to work with such fantastic people. But then I think you could see the energy levels just draining and like getting tired, getting frustrated because you play 2 Yuletide concerts in a row. You can't do anything for the rest of the day because you're just mentally exhausted because it's such a fast-paced show that you have to be ready for. And he took me aside and he said, look out into the audience and you'll see these kids that are there. You'll see the families that are there. This might be the only time they come to the ISO this entire season.
It's not cheap.
It's not. It's getting very expensive, which I have mixed feelings about still, where, all the shows are essentially going to sell out, which is amazing, and they're going to be able to charge essentially whatever they want to charge. But I still want to make it accessible somehow to
for those who've never been. Yuletide is a ISO's holiday show.
It is, yeah.
And it's been compared now by many, including Sandy Patty. I'm going to name drop here. I just interviewed her.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
That show dropped last week, and we talked about its quality, its production quality. And it rivals, she believes it rivals Radio City Music Hall.
It does,
and I agree.
I mean, a lot of the production quality, even maybe not modern Broadway, because modern Broadway just goes way extreme, but traditional Broadway, a lot of the scene changes, the quality of the costumes and everything, the quality of singers rivals traditionally what Broadway has all been about. And that's where Jack and Ty come from.
And background. The talent that Jack from his connection, he and Ty.
Yeah.
And once again, there's so many ways one can use the term brilliant when it comes to, so many elements of ISO programming, and the talent is something to be proud of. And I don't think Indy really understands what we have. Many do, of course, And I hear more and more people that I interview who are guests of the ISO. They rave about the sound of the orchestra getting better and better.
Yeah.
And I believe there's a connection with all the younger people who have showed up since the retirements and COVID and all of that. Do you agree?
It's exciting to be a part of.
Well, you're in the middle of it.
I mean, right now I'm the longest serving cellist at the ISO, so I'm the old man of the group, unfortunately.
And you were 20 when you started.
I was, yeah. So now I just turned 30 last week, so this is almost. I think next season will be my 10th season, but we had a full circle event this past 2 weeks ago or so, where all our auditions are completely blind, which means that there's a screen separating the committee and the stage where the people are playing. So we don't know who we hire until we actually hire them. And so we had a principal, associate, and assistant second violin. So that's the first 3 title chairs of the second violin.
What's the median age of the...
Sure. I think now it's probably...
It looks 30-ish.
I would say probably late 20s, early 30s. Yeah. But so
Would you agree that it's added a vitality and a vigor? That's.
I think so. I think it's one of those. A lot of the people who come in have these ideas where they want the orchestra to go, and the old guard, they're amazing players, such fantastic humans. I think after they stopped touring and recording, there was an idea that, we're good enough for this. We can make this our job. It turns into a job. You basically show up, play the concert, go home. There's no long-term vision or anything. And a lot of people were totally content with that because it was a stable job. It was a safe job. They got to still play beautiful music. But
COVID turned that around.
Oh, yeah. Well, especially it made it so that you couldn't do normal things anymore. You had to get creative. And so I think a lot of these people are coming out of school when COVID was happening, they were in school. So they had all these creative ideas. Exactly. And now you talk to everybody. Everybody wants to go on tour again. They want to start recording. They want to go places and play other than downtown Indianapolis, which I think is amazing because that not only gives us a sense of, where do we stand amongst American orchestras? Because we can say, we're a world-class orchestra that rivals, any other orchestra in the States. But the reality of it is that we have a lot of work to do still. And I've played with a number of orchestras. I think we are an incredible orchestra that has a ton of potential, but it just takes us going to play a yearly concert at Carnegie Hall and Chicago Symphony Center, in Europe at the Music Verein, and have those audiences judge that for us. And so we can present the best product we can have, but ultimately that's what drives the quality forward.
I can't let you go unless I hear how it is working for Maestro Marco.
Oh, we love him. He honestly, since I've been at the orchestra,
the listeners should know that he's the newly appointed conductor.
He is our music director. Yeah. I can't remember. I think he's 8th music director. I can't remember his official.
Formerly for 20 years has been a consultant. Yeah, artistic consultant.
So he was, since 2020, he was artistic.
And he is advisor. From which country?
Germany. So he's half Japanese, half German. He lives in Munich currently, and he's the absolute nicest person, most genuine human being, but also keeps artistic quality high by still being very strict. And so it's that perfect combination of he draws you, and I don't know if you've been to any of the classical shows that he's conducted this season, but the last 2 ones that we did, he gave this talk. Did
he just do one recently?
He did, yes. We did Beethoven 5. Okay. And then we did a sea theme one and also the birds. And so we did this ocean theme, the sea theme one. And so he came out for the second half and essentially gave a cruise operator announcement, like, welcome to the cruise on your left hand. So basically went through the entire Lemaire as if it was a cruise director, and people were dying laughing. It was hilarious.
So is he a great educator on the podium?
He is.
With the audience?
With the audience, got a great rapport? With musicians, with up-and-coming conductors. The orchestra, I hesitate to say unanimously because nothing in life is unanimous, but this is as close to unanimous as I've seen people love a conductor in any orchestra.
I wondered, how is he communicating with the audience? Is he a good teacher? Does he talk about the piece?
Yes, and so he knows that the average person coming into an orchestra concert won't know, for example, what a dominant chord is or what the cadence means or anything like that. And so he doesn't put things in terms of these kind of what one could consider semi-elitist terms that you need an
academic.
For. Exactly. Yeah. And so in turn, he says, this is the story about what you're about to hear.
That's great to hear.
And so when you hear this happen, that's what happens. I mean, he told this whole joke about the Song of the Nightingale, Stravinsky, which even most of us on stage had never played, never heard. And so it's about this nightingale who heals the Emperor of China. And so he sings the song, the nightingale heals him. Then this delegation from Japan comes and says, we can make this mechanical nightingale. It's much more efficient. You don't have to eat it. Then he was like, and then this happens when the orchestra basically explodes, when the percussion hits. That's when the nightingale blows up, the melancholic nightingale. And so then you would see that when that part came, you looked at the audience and they're like, yeah, I get it.
And that's so important for, and one of the reasons why people who aren't exposed to classical music are intimidated by it. They feel, oh, I don't understand this. What am I supposed to, what should I know about this? And it makes people are intimidated because they feel uneducated.
Sure, yeah. But that's, again, we shouldn't expect people to know the intricacies of this thing, because I have 6 years of advanced degrees in this to be able to tell you exactly what this music's about and how it works. But
what I tell people though is and I want to talk to you about her because we both share her in common.
Yeah.
The late Marianne Tobias, her program notes live on.
Uh-huh.
And I don't know how long they're going to be continued to print in the ISO program. She wrote about everything, did she not? Her body of work is extensive. And I think it's on the internet.
It is, and a lot of orchestras have been using her
So
material
read
as well.
her notes before you go. Or I often, she's taught me as a reviewer about classical music.
I mean, she also wrote a fantastic book called Classical Music Without Fear.
Yeah.
And I was privileged. I mean, we knew each other quite well.
I know.
And so I was privileged one time, the one time that I hung out with her at her house, we catered in food and just kind of hung out, just getting to know each other as, I was the new person in ISO. And so she gave me this book, and she's like, if you want to read or put it on the toilet or whatever, you can have other people here when they come over. And just like so disparaging about her humor. But I read it and it's brilliant because it explains, it's kind of like a music appreciation class without being dumbed down at all.
Austin, I learned, I visited her a few times.
Uh-huh.
I was fortunate to have her practice in front of me. It was rare.
Uh-huh.
But I looked over and I saw that cello. I had noticed it before. I thought it was just a decoration, but no, she played it.
She played, yeah.
I never heard her play it. How did she play?
I never heard her play it either. When I knew her, she was quite shy about it. But I remember hearing from other orchestra members that she played piano also incredibly well. And so I think she was one of those where she was such a brilliant person. She was also a vet assistant. She
and a Spanish interpreter.
Exactly. And so she basically is one of those where whenever she wants to do, she's going to be amazing at it. So she more goes based off of, I'm inspired by the music. I want to learn how to play cello, so I'm going to learn how to play cello.
And I know you loved her sense of humor like everybody else did.
Absolutely.
Huh? She had a wit.
It was sharp, which was amazing.
She did not suffer fools well.
There were multiple meetings where she was annoyed at the meeting, and she would put on this kind of faux disguise of, a little bit of ditziness. And, anybody who knew her was like, oh,
she could be sarcastic too.
Exactly. So she would have this ditzy kind of faux kind of facade. And then at the last sentence, she'll just like slip something in there, just like, why are we wasting our time?
She loved musicians. She loved you.
Yeah.
She loved, they're all friends.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And she championed you in the halls of power there too.
She is a true friend, true family.
The occasion of her death is coming close, so it's going to be a rough month for a lot of people, including myself. Uh-huh. I think it was July. Yeah. So let's wrap things up because I know you've got to save your energy unless it rains. We're recording this on the 3rd of July, and tonight is Star Spangled Symphony at the Conner Prairie.
Yep. It'll be fun.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that it doesn't rain because it's the one show that every year that I do play, and I
want to ask you about Conner Prairie.
Yeah.
How do you like playing out there?
I mean, as I've been more and more with the ISO, I actually end up playing less and less at Conner Prairie. There are times, when it's 90 degrees with 90%
and the bugs.
And the bugs. There was actually one of our bass players took his bass out, and he heard, he's like, he walked in the bass room. There was one of those mayflies still alive on his bass from the previous night's concert. Traditionally for July 4th concerts, we get anywhere from 10 to 15,000 people on average. And so whether you're going just to hear the music, whether you're going because you want a patriotic experience, whatever you want out of it, it's fulfilling to know that we bring meaning to that many people's lives by what we do. And so I love it. We also selfishly, we play 1812 Overture, which has one of the most beautiful cello
never
openings.
gets tired.
It's amazing. I love it. So I'm happy that we are able to play that.
Plus, people should know when they go out there and support it, they pay for the programming for the rest of the year.
Yeah, exactly.
If ever that and Yuletide are the cash cows.
Exactly.
Right?
And so and that's the other thing is, like, for example, we're doing a John Williams concert out there. So if you like John Williams.
Is that also the same program than the Ultimate?
Jack made a joke about that where, it's the Ultimate John Williams and then the best of John Williams. So come and find out the difference.
You never told me, or I changed the subject, or whatever. But what was the story about John Williams and you?
Oh, so it was, I didn't know this until Jack said it on stage, because Jack...
I couldn't hear her, by the way. That's why.
Sure. So I wasn't sure exactly what happened, because Jack was in touch with me throughout the previous years, like, hey, we're going to try to do 7 years in Tibet. We have to get permission, all that. Then finally he texted me a score to it and said, we're good. We're going to play it. And apparently what I didn't know is that he had to personally go and ask John Williams, can we borrow your personal set of parts? So much so that there's only one printed set of parts in existence, and that's this set of parts. So much so that they had to mail it out the very next day, same day mail, so that John could go conduct it in, I think, LA or something like that. So then apparently Jack asked that, and he was saying, this is the cellist who's going to play it. And I've played his Memoirs of a Geisha a couple years back that he knew about and played with him when he was here. And apparently his response was, for you, for the ISO, and for Austin, you can borrow my parts.
That's
just
great.
This one concert, basically. So it made me feel incredibly...
Talk about a compliment.
I mean, I think that might have been the best compliment I've ever received, just because I grew up listening to John Williams music. He's a personal hero of mine in every sense. I mean, he's also the kindest person ever to have graced the earth, essentially, where he is so humble, so kind, whereas he could easily just be the biggest narcissist if he really wanted to, because he's such a talented person, but he's not. And so to have that idea, he could also have charged, $20,000 for the set of parts for us to use it as a rental, but he didn't. He did it just because Jack is amazing, Ty is amazing, and the orchestra has a really fantastic relationship with him.
What a great estimation. Yeah. So let's close with this question. What do you envision the trajectory of your career?
Sure. I obviously want to be a principal cellist. I've known that ever since I studied with my college teacher. And I love the ISO. I do have my eyes set on big five orchestras, for better or worse. Maybe worse because they're only, maybe one or two coming up every decade or so. And so if I were to look forward, if I was to have one thing that I would work forward in life, is to be a principal of one of those big orchestras, New York, Chicago, LA. And so to be a principal of that, I think would be the most fulfilling job that I could have, because yes, it is much more high stress than being principal of the ISO, because the ISO is much more like a family, which I found much more here than any other orchestra. Other orchestras, it's much more, you have to show up, you have to execute perfectly, and if you don't, you're going to get talked to, kind of thing. And it's much more cutthroat, which I can handle. I'm fine with that. But I think that kind of world-class level, that doing tours, that soloing with the Boston Symphony, that seems like something that it would make my life to have that happen. So that's something that I'm going to be working forward up until I retire. Even if it doesn't ever happen, that's still be working forward to it.
So we're going to hear one more piece to close the show. What will it be?
So this one's actually a throwback to my Colburn days. This is speaking of the Principal of LA, this is a suite by Giancarlo Menotti, who, speaking of Curtis as well, he went to Curtis. He was an opera composer in the 20th century, and he wrote this suite for two cellos and a piano. And the Principal of LA and I went back to when I did a competition and when we played a music festival in 2012 or so, back before I was in college. And so we kept in touch. We were very close colleagues. And so I asked him to play my senior recital. He agreed, and it was an absolute inspiration to play with him. So this is the finale, the last movement of Giancarlo Menotti's suite for two cellos and piano.
Well, listen, it's been a pleasure. There's no question. I feel so fortunate to have this platform, Austin, because I get to talk to people like you, and it's so easy talking with you. When I last time I saw you to ask you to do the podcast, I can be a little shy sometimes. Sure. And so it took a lot for me to just go up there and talk to him.
Oh, yeah.
Who cares?
Absolutely.
And I thought about when I'm sitting there and I see people going up to talk to the musicians, and by the way, it says something about your work ethic. You're always one of the first ones out there to tune up.
Yeah.
And so when I went up there, it was a lot of fun. But I wonder if they're thinking like I usually do. I wonder what they're talking about.
I mean, half the time it's, sometimes it's students coming up to, I had a student one time come up and tell me, because she was very worried about her IYO Indianapolis Youth Symphony seating audition. She came up and was like, I got Principal. And, she was freaking out about that. I was like, I'm so proud of you. I have to warm up, but we'll talk about this later, but great job kind of thing. So sometimes it's that, sometimes it's, a patron that I haven't seen in 5 years who finally comes back. I appreciated it. So yeah, but if anybody ever wants to come up and talk, music, that makes everybody's easier.
There you go. He's an accessible musician.
Exactly. There's no fourth wall at the ISO.
Thank you again.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me.
Our thanks go out to our media sponsor, Urban Times. Urban Times is a monthly news magazine which serves as the official neighborhood newsletter for 16 Indianapolis neighborhoods, offering news about development, arts and entertainment, and from the business community.
Who will take center stage on the podcast next? Your seat on the aisle with Tom Alvarez awaits. Follow Tom on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok, and make sure to visit tomalvarez.studio. Watch Tom every other Thursday on Lifestyle Live on Wish TV, and make sure to listen every week here on the All Indiana Podcast Network.